What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through my Week 5 top 70 flex rankings, and this week has really felt like a bloodbath. I mean, first off, we have the first bye weeks of the season, so 4 teams of fantasy-relevant guys now are off the table, and then it had felt like through 4 weeks, we had kind of been getting away, from a ton of injuries, and then this week, it feels like everything's just falling down. I mean, we've got like the entire 49ers team that's out for this one, with the exception of Christian McCaffrey. There's just a lot of other injuries that have popped up, some players who are potentially questionable, at risk of not playing in week 5. So you might have to dig deeper into your bench. Definitely made these rankings a little bit tougher, but hopefully these rankings can help you guys out. So let's just dive right into tier 1. And as per usual, not going super in depth on these early guys. They're locks in your lineup. So tier 1, Puka Nacua, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, James Cook, Jonathan Taylor, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. These guys have all been studs. I expect them to continue to be locks in your lineup moving forward. Moving into tier 2, going to start off with Amarian Hampton going up against the Commanders. After a rough start to the season, he's bounced back with 2 really strong games, 24.9 and 27.5 PPR points. Expect him to keep it rolling here against the Panthers. Then I'm going to go with Devon Achane. Didn't have a great, receiving game in week 4, but with the Tyreek Hill injury, I do think they're going to pepper him with targets. He should continue to be a very strong running back 1. Then I'm going to go with JSN, just a super strong start to the season, very consistent, high floor weekly option. Then I have Saquon, kind of a disappointing start. He's been inefficient, but it's still Saquon Barkley. I still trust the run game of the Eagles offense. It's not a great matchup here against the Broncos, but I highly doubt you're going to pivot away from Saquon Barkley at this point. Then I have Javonte Williams. He has been a monster early on in the season. He is the running back 7 in points per game. You have Miles Sanders banged up. This Cowboys offense is kind of humming. The defense is rough. They can get a lot of these high-scoring games. Javonte is in my top 12 players this week. Then I've got 2 wide receivers to close out this tier with Justin Jefferson and Garrett Wilson. Both guys have quarterback question marks. Jefferson's been fine over the last few weeks. Still obviously one of, if not the best wide receivers in the NFL. And then for Garrett Wilson, obviously there's going to be some frustration. The passing volume isn't going to be there consistently, but this is just a great matchup here against the Cowboys. They're allowing the most points per game to the wide receiver position, and not just by a little bit, like 7 PPR points per game more than the second worst defense and stopping his wide receivers. So Garrett Wilson is a really strong option and just a super, super talented player. They're going to need to get him the ball more consistently than what we saw in Monday Night Football. Then pivoting into tier 3, we're going to start off with George Pickens, who's coming off a monster week 4, 11 targets, 8 receptions for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's 3 straight just really strong games. If he can combine the volume now with the touchdown upside in this Cowboys offense, he is going to be a really strong play. Someone who I have moved up a pretty solid amount from my earlier in the week rankings is Breece Hall. I just really like this matchup against the Cowboys. They're allowing the 6th most points per game to the running back position. And then with the Braylon Allen injury, it does just feel like Breece is going to be, completely opened up to that goal line role, overall better usage. So I think he's going to see a larger opportunity share of this backfield and in a nice matchup. I really like Breece Hall here a lot more than I did earlier on in the week. After Breece, I'm going to be rolling with Nico Collins going up against the Ravens. This is a good matchup on paper. This Ravens defense has already struggled both at stopping the pass and the run. They're allowing the 5th most points per game to the wide receiver position, and now they're even more banged up than they've been in previous weeks. So I think this could be a big time Nico Collins game. Then I'm going to continue to ride with Emeka Egbuka. As a rookie, he has come in. He is the wide receiver 8 in points per game. He's improved on his target number in every single week. And until we get a really crowded wide receiver room with Evans back, now that Godwin's back, I think we can, continue to fire up Egbuka as a potential back end, even mid-tier wide receiver 1 with some of the bye weeks and injuries. Then I have Ashton Genty going up against the Colts. Finally got right in week 4, 138 rushing yards, a rushing touchdown, 2 receptions for 17 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was great to see his overall talent and ability just finally translate to a big fantasy game. I don't think we're going to get that every week. Obviously, the offensive line is still a weak point. They're also kind of banged up on the O-line. I think it was one of their tackles or maybe their guard went on IR. So he's still going to have, some inefficiency there, but the usage is really strong. I like him here in my top 20 players this week. Then I have Deebo Samuel. Now, in these rankings, I don't think Terry's going to play. It doesn't seem like he's trending in that direction. Now, Deebo did miss practice on Wednesday, but I'm not overly concerned. I believe it was a heel. I would expect him to play. We have Jaden Daniels back. I think that's a good sign for Deebo. Then I have Derrick Henry going up against the Texans. No doubt it's been a rough start to the season. Weeks 2, 3, and 4, he put up 2.3, 10.7, and 7.8 PPR points. Now he's losing Lamar Jackson. And I think you can look at that in a couple different ways. I think losing Lamar just like greatly decreases both the floor and ceiling of this offense. But on the other hand, I do think we could see this offense just completely run through Derrick Henry, where there's kind of been some frustration early on where even on like third and fourths and short, like Derrick Henry hasn't been out there. He hasn't necessarily been the focal point. With no Lamar Jackson, like this team is going to run through Derrick Henry. And so I'm really not super worried about the slow start. I think he'll be fine moving forward. Then I have a back-to-back rookie running backs with Quinshawn Judkins and Cam Scatabo. Both of these guys on somewhat, suspect offenses, but they're both going to handle just really strong workloads. Both can get involved as pass catchers. Both are just going to be really strong options and I think have really bright futures in the NFL. And then two more guys in this tier. I did move Jamar Chase down a little bit. Some people might think this is still too high. Obviously, the 2 games without Burrow, for the full game or even starting have been rough, right? Week 3, 5 for 50. Week 4, 5 for 23. Jake Browning just looks like infinitely worse than how he did during like that 6-7 game stretch in 2023. But I'm still just like for one more week going to bank on the talent of Jamar Chase. If he goes out and has a dud game here against the Lions, then we're going to need to have some rough discussions on where he ranks rest of season and, how far I drop him. But as of right now, I'm going to trust him one more time. If he flops, like I said, there's going to have to be a major adjustment moving forward. And then the last guy in this tier is going to be Travis Etienne. Just super strong rushing production. It's not the greatest matchup here against the Chiefs, but this Jaguars run game has been great. Etienne has been a really nice fantasy play and a really solid value just dating back to, redraft drafts. Now looking at tier 4, going to start off with Devontae Adams. Just a really nice start to the season. There really hasn't been like a major adjustment period with him and Matthew Stafford, especially over the last 3 weeks. Just great production. Like him here as like a back-end wide receiver 1 this week. Then I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston. Just have to give him his respect. He's the wide receiver 4 in points per game. He's been consistent week after week. He's been a really nice option in your lineup. Just got to keep riding the hot hand here. Then we've got Xavier Worthy going up against the Jaguars. It was a great return to the lineup here in week 4. 8 targets, 5 receptions, 83 yards, 2 carries for 38 yards, had multiple different splash plays. I like the way they used him creatively. I think he keeps it going here against the Jaguars. Then I have Courtland Sutton, and outside of that like dud week 2, he's just logged 3 really solid games. He's always going to have solid touchdown upside. It's not a great matchup here against the Eagles, but I still like Courtland Sutton as a wide receiver 2. Then I'm going to go with Zay Flowers. He is someone who took a hit with the Lamar injury. I mean, going from Lamar to Cooper Rush, it's not ideal, especially for these pass catchers. He's been very solid, though, 15.2 points per game while only getting into the end zone 1 time. I hope they try to find ways to get him involved, use him creatively, get him some quick touches, potentially a few, end arounds, carries out of the backfield. I think that's probably what they're going to try to do. I think in week 1 especially, like they just really made their major game plan from a passing perspective, getting the ball to Zay Flowers. And I imagine with no Lamar, that's going to be the case once again here in week 5. Then I'm going to go with Kyren Williams. He is someone who I've moved up throughout the week. And it really just came down to the 49ers being completely banged up. Like from a game script perspective, this does seem like it could be a really solid Kyren game where the Rams are now 4th in implied points. They're 7-point favorites. I have no idea how the 49ers are going to move the ball. Like Christian McCaffrey is going to touch the ball 30, 35 times this game. They just have like no one else that can do anything with, still no Kittle, no Ayuk, no Ricky, no Jennings. You're now on a backup quarterback in Mac Jones. I think the Rams should be in control of this game, which could lead to a very solid workload for Kyren Williams and some touchdown opportunities mixed in also. Then I'm going to go with Trey McBride. Hasn't had any huge boom games to start off the season, but he's just been very consistent. I think the Cardinals are going to put up points here against the Titans. I do think this could end up being his best game of the season. And then moving into tier 5, we're going to start it off with Keenan Allen. On the season, he's the wide receiver 10 in points per game, is coming off a rough week 4, but he logged 3 solid games before that. Still like Keenan Allen moving forward. Then I'm going to go with Michael Pittman. Really nice start to the season. He's been a high-end wide receiver too. Don't know if he keeps that pace throughout the entire year, but I still like him as a nice number 2 wide receiver this week. Then I have Jalen Waddle, and I think Waddle's definitely going to benefit from the Tyreek Hill injury. He's kind of been in this like overall bucket with like Devonta Smith, T. Higgins as guys who are like wide receiver 2s in their offenses. They're good players, but their upside is kind of capped. And they've all kind of gone in different directions, especially last year, where like Devonta Smith kind of just held the line, and that's exactly what he was. T. Higgins was still the number 2, but it was a huge boom year for the Bengals for Joe Burrow. So he had this like great wide receiver 1 season. And then the Dolphins kind of crumbled, and Jalen Waddle just completely fell off. But now I think he has that upside unlocked where he can be the wide receiver 1 of this team. They're going to pepper him with targets, and I think he can be a really strong option moving forward. After Waddle, I'm going to go with Tyler Warren going up against the Raiders. He's been a super consistent option. He's hit 70 receiving yards in 3 of his 4 games. The Colts are using him creatively. He got 2 goal line carries in week 4, converted 1 of those into a touchdown. He's averaging 13 points per game. And what is kind of fun about the goal line usage is that the Colts, when they get in the red zone, near the goal line, they go extremely run heavy. And that can be somewhat problematic for the pass catchers where it does limit the touchdown upside. But if Tyler Warren can't get involved in the run game, that's just kind of another area where he's going to be able to produce, which is super fun. Then we actually have a running back here with Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's weird because obviously it was a gross start to the season with the usage. It does feel like in any given week, he could just take a stranglehold of this backfield. But it also seems like this team is, really trying to make Zach Charbonnet a thing, keeping him involved in this backfield. Kenneth Walker, 60% opportunity share in week 4. Charbonnet still taking the goal line carries. So until we see Walker actually pull away, it's going to be tough for me to rank him any higher than this. Then I have Alvin Kamara, kind of an underwhelming start to the season. The usage has been fine. He just hasn't really come through in the touchdown department, which isn't all that shocking given this offense. But then also just like receiving wise, like the volume hasn't been crazy. And then he's just been really inefficient as a pass catcher, and it just hasn't led to great production. After Kamara, going to go with Rachaad White. This is obviously going to be assuming that Bucky Irving does not play. I believe Bucky Irving's dealing with a foot sprain. He was walking around in a boot, so it does seem very unlikely that he plays this week. And, you could talk yourself into Sean Tucker. I think if this is like a short-term injury, Tucker's going to need a longer runway to really like take over this backfield. So Rachaad White has been the clear-cut number 2. Sean Tucker's really been a non-factor this season. So I do think Rachaad White is going to be the guy. They trust him on third downs. They trust him in pass protection. He might not be as good of like a pure runner as Sean Tucker, but I think he's going to get really involved as a pass catcher. The usage is going to be there. I think Rachaad White is a really solid option if you've been holding him on the bench as like a handcuff play. Then some wide receivers, couple of guys to close out this tier, A.J. Brown and Tetairoa McMillan. A.J. Brown has been super disappointing, 8.8 PPR points per game. I think the positives, though, are that he has been seeing decent volume. In the last 3 games, he has commanded 8, 10, and 9 targets. If he's consistently getting that type of usage, I do have a lot of confidence that he is going to turn that into strong fantasy production. And then the last guy here is Tetairoa McMillan. Just from like a player perspective, I think McMillan has been awesome. I think he is going to be a great wide receiver for a long time in the NFL. It's just that his ceiling is capped playing with the Panthers, playing with Bryce Young, but also this matchup against the Dolphins could be interesting, and we could see a boom game. Also would like to see him get into the end zone. That would be nice. Now looking at tier 6, we have Marvin Harrison Jr., Chris Olave. Marv working through some things. Hopefully he can pick up where he left off in the second half of that Thursday night game. Chris Olave, first like lower volume game, but supplemented it by getting into the end zone. Should continue to be a focal point of this offense. Then we have Woody Marks, and he's a really interesting player. Had a tough time ranking him because I can certainly see the upside play here where it looks like from a usage perspective, he went in, he took over this backfield, 18 carries for 73 yards and a touchdown in week 4, 5 targets, 4 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown. If that usage sticks, I think he should be ranked higher than this. The Ravens are a great matchup for running backs. They're allowing the most points per game. Like I talked about with Nico Collins, they are super banged up. But you can never fully trust like the usage, especially for these rookie running backs where like long-term rest of season, I think Woody Marks is going to be awesome. I think he is, clearly going to pull away from Nick Chubb. But sometimes at the beginning, these things can kind of fluctuate. I think you even look at like a Cam Scatterbo, Tyrone Tracy situation where I believe it was week 2, Cam Scatterbo from a usage perspective had kind of taken over that backfield. Then you head into week 3, and before the Tracy injury, like it was looking like Tracy was going to be the running back in usage just for that game. So I'd like to see some consistency here. But for Woody Marks, I still think he's a nice play this week. Matchup wise, even if this is like a 50-50 split, I still think he can be very productive. Then I have another running back in Chuba Hubbard going up against the Dolphins. He is dealing with a calf injury. I don't think he's a lock to play this week. Like I think Dave Canales came out and said that the calf was feeling worse this week, after the game than it was heading into week 4, which is not ideal. And even if he doesn't miss, like he is kind of bleeding touches to Rico Dowdle, which is less than ideal. So this is where I have him right now. Definitely a injury situation we'll have to monitor though. Then I'm going to go with David Montgomery. This is all about the matchup. The Bengals are allowing the second most points per game to the running back position. We saw he had the huge week 4, huge week 3, tough matchup week 4, later real stinker. I think he is going to bounce back here against the Bengals. Then we have, I believe this is my tight end 3 with Jake Ferguson. For every position, running backs, wide receivers included, Jake Ferguson is 4th in targets. He's just commanding a crazy amount of volume. Not super efficient, but still someone who's very playable, even as like a flex option if you have another strong tight end. And then another tight end here with Brock Bowers. I know he's been underwhelming. He has not hit 10 PPR points in any of the last 3 games, but he also hasn't gotten into the end zone. He's been banged up. He's in that knee brace. I think at any given moment he could break out and, look like the guy we saw last year, but I can't rank him much higher until we actually see one of those games. Then a couple of running backs here, Chase Brown and Jordan Mason. For Chase Brown, like the overall opportunity share is good. The offense is just so unbelievably bad. And then for Jordan Mason, I am kind of sketched out by him a little bit in his usage. He's pretty purely like just giving you work on the ground, which is fine in certain matchups, but just from like a game script perspective, this Vikings team and like offense as a whole isn't so good that they're just going to be like running away in these matchups. And so we saw last week, like he's just not involved late in the game as a pass catcher. He has had 16 carries in back-to-back games, but what does that actually net you in this matchup against the Browns, where they are allowing the second fewest points per game to the running back position? So I would kind of temper my expectations if you are playing Jordan Mason this week. Then I have a couple of underperforming second-year wide receivers, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey. Not giving up hope on these guys, but it is tough to rank them any higher with how rough they've been to start off the season. I think Ladd's the guy where it's like, you'd really like to see him bounce back because it's not even like he's in his own head. Like, he just hasn't been playing that well, hasn't really been productive. He had been fine through 3 weeks. The week 4 was just really awful. I mean, like 6 targets, only 1 reception, really bad. Then I'm going to go with Jacoby Myers. Back-to-back games where he's, not giving you that super safe floor. Hasn't hit 10 PPR points in each of those last 2. Still a fine option. Raiders wide receiver 1. Then I'm going to go with J.K. Dobbins going up against the Eagles. I think there's kind of been some interesting takeaways with this Broncos backfield where some people seem to think that the only reason RJ Harvey got involved was because it was garbage time and they were pulling away. Like, that is just not true. The Broncos made an effort to get RJ Harvey involved very early on in this game. At halftime, RJ Harvey had logged more carries than J.K. Dobbins. So I do expect RJ Harvey to be involved in this backfield. I don't think this was just like a one-off situation, but in a more competitive game script, do they trust J.K. Dobbins as the veteran a little bit more than RJ Harvey? I think that is something you could kind of debate here. The issue for Dobbins, though, is that he just doesn't give you anything as a pass catcher. So if he's not getting into the end zone, he's probably going to give you underwhelming production. Like, from a real-life perspective, in week 4, he looked great. He rushes for over 100 yards, but he doesn't score a touchdown. I think he might have had 1 reception, potentially 0, and so he's giving you 10, 11 points per game on overall a really solid performance, especially on the ground. So I have them separated by 1 tier at this point, but kind of close. And I do think Harvey's the guy that's going to gain momentum moving forward. Then I'm going to go with Tony Pollard. I mean, strong usage, just an awful offense. Stephon Diggs is my number 55 player. We did see an uptick in his usage. He was kind of hovering in like the 50 to 60, 65% route participation through 3 weeks. That bumped up to 82% in week 4, and it led to 6 receptions for 101 yards, even in like a pretty low volume passing game. So it would be nice to see that stick against the Bills, potential revenge game here for Diggs. Then I have Chris Godwin going up against the Seahawks. Not a great fantasy day, but from a usage perspective, like it was great. 91% route participation, commanded 10 targets. With that type of usage with Mike Evans out, he is going to be a strong wide receiver play. And then moving into the 7th and final tier, we're starting off with the guy that I already mentioned, RJ Harvey, 20.6 PPR points, 14 carries for 66 yards, 5 targets, 4 receptions for 40 yards, and a touchdown. I do think he's going to be a factor. I do think this matchup against the Eagles, there's going to be just like less overall production from this running back room. But if you did draft RJ Harvey, I think you have to be feeling good about his outlook moving forward. Then I have Devonta Smith, Jordan Addison, just kind of like low upside wide receiver options, but like fine wide receiver threes. Jamison Williams, who's kind of like in a similar range, but very different archetype from those guys. He just has not been commanding enough volume. 10 receptions in 4 games is just not great, but he's always going to be a big play threat, a threat to get into the end zone. Then I have Khalil Shakir. He's the wide receiver 32 in points per game on an offense that is going to be very high scoring. Lions, Bills, top 2 teams this week in implied points. Then I have Hunter Henry in that same matchup with Khalil Shakir. Hunter Henry's the tight end 4 in points per game. He scored in double digits in 3 out of 4. Potential pass heavy game script here, potentially trailing to the Bills. I think he's interesting. Then I'm going to go with Wan'Dale Robinson going up against the Saints. I can just smell like a 12 target, 8 reception for like 60-yard game out of Wan'Dale. That might be generous. Maybe 8 receptions for like 50 yards. I just think he's going to get peppered with opportunities. He's probably going to be pretty inefficient, but from a PPR perspective, I think he'll be fine this week. Then I have Zach Charbonnet. Like I talked about with Kenneth Walker, he's still taking like 40% of the opportunities. He has the touchdown upside working in on the goal line. Then I have Ramondre, just a gross Patriots running back room. I did want to give the edge to Travion Henderson, but Ramondre just continues to lead this team in opportunities. It did seem like he got punished a little bit, not working in as much near the goal line, but it's not even like those opportunities are going exclusively to Travion Henderson. Now you've got Antonio Gibson in the mix. I want to say he took 4 goal line snaps, and I think he only played 9 snaps overall. So they've just got him sitting on the bench, and then they drive down the field, and they're like, all right, Antonio Gibson, come on in, vulture this touchdown, just ruin things for Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson. Obviously, you hope at some point that gets phased out, but tough to really trust any of these guys. Then I have Sam Laporta, Travis Kelce, tight ends on good offenses. You're hoping they can get into the end zone. T. Higgins, talented player, just like awful offensive situation. Last 2 weeks, 1 reception for 15 yards, 3 for 32, just bad. Then I have Keon Coleman, nice week 1, underwhelming since then. This is where we're getting into like the kind of prefer not to play these guys. And then my number 70 player is Juwan Johnson, and I originally had him ranked higher, but he's banged up. He missed practice Wednesday with an ankle injury. And then you do have some of the tight ends on this team also kind of getting healthy, which could potentially cut into his overall route participation if those guys can play, which has really been like the appealing factor for Juwan Johnson, is just like his usage had been so much better than almost every other tight end. That could start to slip, especially if he's banged up. So like multiple ways where he could actually, lose routes on this offense. And so that is going to wrap it up for my top 70. Definitely getting thinner, towards the end compared to recent videos, but hopefully this helps you guys out. If you have like some deeper questions that players aren't on here, I'd love to answer them down below. But thank you all for stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one.